All right. So thank you so much, Dom, for taking your time for the interview. So this is a series where we are talking to CIOs, CTOs, and CEOs and exploring their life, career, and their views on how technology is impacting multiple industries, future of work, and various aspects. Okay.
Sounds
So I see that you have done computer engineering, and very interesting is computer engineering specialized in ERP, because that is something new I've never come across. If you could elaborate how you bumped into and how is that different from typical computer engineering?
Yeah, in our school in the university where I went to, after the third year, you had a specialization. Like you could pick programming in media, like telecommunications, or you could pick ERP systems. You could pick general programming, like hardware programming that's closer to the hardware. And I just picked this one because back then I realized that even though I'm studying computer engineering, but I can't see myself writing code for 10 or 20 years. So I'm not that technical, or I wouldn't be the person designing the next database structure that's not going to be relational. So I'm not going to be that person. And ERP, that track at that university was more about business. It was like 80% about how a company operates from a logistical perspective, from a manufacturing perspective, from payroll, finances, accounting, and all those things that an ERP system supports. So 80% of it was about understanding how companies work, and then 20% was about understanding how an ERP system can support that work. And there were a couple of ERP systems that we've tried, like programming screens in SAP for SAP and ABAP, just to have a sense of it. But yeah, it was a lot more about how businesses function, how manufacturing companies function, how they have to plan with their resource, with resourcing, with the vendor management, with timing of shipments, and all those things that make a company function. So and we had accounting classes, all those things. So that was actually what I think that was what made me actually graduate, because that was something that I was really interested in, having IT as a puzzle fit into a larger picture. And yeah, that's why that specialization really, it was the best fit of the opportunities that I had at that university.
And looks like that covered even a part of MBA, if you ever aspired to do MBA, because if 80% of the topic was covering how business functions, that kind of helped. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah,
very interesting. I think other colleges should adopt this as well, because there could be people who are planning to do engineering plus MBA, but if engineering final year can cover a lot of that aspect, it saves a lot of time.
Yeah. And by the way, you're not the first one who says that they've never heard of a major like that within the computer engineering. When I was working at GE, I was in the US for a training for a month in 2013, and one of the senior leaders said the same thing. She said that she's never heard of anyone. She was responsible for a large ERP implementation, and then she was interested in me potentially joining her team because of that. But she's never had that. She's never had someone specifically studied that in the past. I think it's also partly rooted in the fact that Hungary is a manufacturing country within Europe. A lot of automobile manufacturing is in Hungary. A lot of other types of electrical engineering companies are set up in Hungary. So we might be generally a little bit closer to these types of manufacturing challenges. And this type of ERP track was really about how a company that produces some product works, because there was a lot of elements of sourcing, then putting it together, then selling it as one piece. So it was a lot about that too.
Makes sense. Now that you mentioned about GE, if you could briefly explain how your career took shape and what made you join TC.
Yeah. So with GE, I was really lucky because totally by accident, I remember someone from school who went through GE's leadership program. GE has all these leadership programs for on the IT track, or in finance, in manufacturing, in HR, in commercial, a lot of leadership programs. And most of them, at least back in the day, was about entry level, like getting people into the workforce and helping them get a very good start. And this was similar with IT. It was a graduate program. One of the rules was that at least in Hungary, that you could not be working for more than 1 or 2 years before you join the company, so that they can mold you instead of you having a very, very specific set of ideas already. And that program was about managing different projects in different fields of IT. Every 6 months, you got a different mentor, you got a couple of different projects for those 6 months. Some projects you've launched, smaller ones you could finish within 6 months, and then there were some larger ones that you took over, you managed them for 6 months, and then you gave it to another project manager. And I was in GE Finance at the time, which was called GE Capital. So most of my projects were about systems that support a bank's operations. That means leasing, evaluating credits, credit applications, bank card management systems, teller functionality. Teller functionality being when you go to the bank and you want physical cash, there's a system that handles that. So it was about those things. And every 6 months, something different. And then my last rotation was not with GE Capital, it was with GE Corporate. GE was a huge company back then. It was about over 300,000 people. And within IT, I think there were 20,000 to 30,000 people working. So it was a gigantic company. And the last rotation was about doing the pilot for GE for Skype for Business. We were evaluating whether we should change from our then chat solution to Skype for Business. And I was managing that project with about 200 pilot members globally, and then gathering their feedback, making sure everyone's in the know about the changes, and all of those testing type of activities. So it was a very interesting switch from being in a very narrow field of GE Capital, focusing on financial transactions, to being in a project that's completely global and across functions and business units. So that was GE. And then when I rolled off GE, this was 2 years of managing projects. I told myself that it would be nice to do something more static. So because I've been doing projects for a couple of years, I think it would be a good next learning opportunity if I would do something more static, like in operations. So I landed in an operations team that was managing GE Corporate's Hungarian offices, which was about 1,500 users, and a couple of our offices in Germany. And I was the bridge between some of the functions that were present there, because this was a service center, like a shared service center. A lot of commercial and accounting functions were housed there. And I was responsible for the commercial team, liaising between the commercial team, essentially owning locally all their applications that they've been using. And if they wanted new projects that were local, specific to this unit in Hungary, then I would help them get the project off the ground by connecting them with the right IT teams and help them scope out their project. So that was my off program after the leadership program role. And after that, that was a really, really good stepping stone for going into AiDOOS, which was between GE and TerraCycle. Because at GE, I was doing everything for a site, but it was small. It wasn't my team. I was still the deputy team leader. However, my team leader was very, very hands off, and whatever I wanted to take over as responsibility, he would gladly give it to me. So it was a very good training ground. And at AiDOOS, I was responsible for a smaller department where we were doing IT from A to Z as well for a specific local business unit of AiDOOS. This was called the International IT Service Desk, and this was about 100 people on site who were doing the service desk functionality for all the AiDOOS stores. AiDOOS is a discount grocery chain, primarily in Europe and the US, and all the European stores were supported by this unit. So it had to be high availability. There could not be any outages when it came to telephony or internet. And all the tools had to work all the time. So it was a high pressure environment. And because my department was responsible for every piece of technology working for the service desk team so that they can support the stores, it was a very good opportunity to be, again, responsible for something from A to Z on a smaller scale. And then to me, I did that for about 2.5 years, same position. And there were projects running under me. There were operational things like the phone system or ticketing system, or some of the things that are specific to this unit that we owned and were not centrally owned on a corporate level. but it was a really good way to get this experience of being responsible for everything. And that's when, and then my motivation as well as career opportunities seem to have dipped at Aldi, because they were not gonna promote a new director, and that would have been a good next step for me. So after a few years, I saw that it will take at least a few more years or even more for me to get a chance to get a director position, or at least get a chance to apply for one. And then I started looking outside of Aldi, and that's how I found TerraCycle, which was a really good fit because it was just a little bit bigger in terms of user scope and in terms of team that I had to manage. So it was a big enough jump that I could jump, and I was just experienced enough for them so that they could take a shot with me. And I wasn't too experienced because this is not a 10,000 person company, it's 450 people or so. So there were people who have run operations with 1,000 people under them in their organization. And then for them, having a 20-person IT team, that was TerraCycle's IT team at the time, that wouldn't be too big of a challenge. So it was a lucky fit that I was experienced enough for TerraCycle to actually be considered. And TerraCycle was a really good next step for me based on where I was in my career at the time.
Your natural inclination to finance and banks and money matters, which we discussed in many previous conversations, has it got to do anything with GE Capital experience? Did that lay foundation? No.
It's the other way around. The reason that I ended up at GE Capital is that I remember that they had a financial manager program, and back at the time, even though I didn't study finance, I was very interested. One, and two, I was very young, so very conceited. I had a big opinion of myself, like I could do anything. It doesn't matter that I didn't study finance. I'm sure I would do great in their financial manager program. And then I reached out to one of my friends who did the IT leadership program 5 years before that. I told him, hey, I'm interested in joining the financial manager program. Can you connect me to an HR person? And then turned out that by then, he was also recruiting for the IT leadership program, because quite a few years have passed since he's been to my school. He was my senior by many years. And then he told me that, yeah, I'll connect you, but you should give it a try. You should give it a try and an interview for the IT leadership program as well, because it might be fun. And I was like, yeah, I'm more interested in the financial part, but sure, I'll interview. And then I interviewed, I got in. I got a lot of friends who were in the financial manager program, and I did not regret my decision to go with the IT track, because back then, I mean, maybe even today, if the program still exists, the financial manager program was primarily Excel. Like you just crunched numbers all day, very, very low level analyst jobs. Soul crushing, long hours, very little to do with the actual fabric of how you do business. Whereas with IT, you get to work with all these different teams that actually do business.
True.
And I was so happy that I've been lured towards the IT track within GN and didn't end up in the financial one. So it was like me thinking that, wow, I would love to work at a bank because I love financial things. And I have this program that I know at GE that I want to try, but then I ended up on the IT track. So it was more, the interest in financial things was already there. I think it was sparked in school when I did this ERP track in the university, but after that it stayed with me, and it has served me well in this TerraCycle position as well.
And it has been almost 6 years, 5 years, 8 months at TerraCycle, and you have seen a lot. You've seen Corona, post-Corona, a lot of overhiring, underhiring. Now there is market slump. Then there are a lot of changes happening in the whole world of work, remote working, hybrid working.
Yeah.
What's your view how this 5-6 years went by, and was it calm, turbulent, and how are you taking it?
Yeah, if I'm looking at from how the company's been doing, the first 3 years of my TerraCycle career, so 2018, 19, 20, 21 even, really, really good years. It was the startup trajectory. Revenue kept increasing, profit was holding steady, even increased, and the future looked very bright. And then Corona wasn't even a big issue for TerraCycle in terms of revenue. We hit a plateau, so our revenue essentially became flat for the year of 2020 after 29. But 2021 was another big growth. So we figured, okay, we've got COVID behind us, and now we're just going to focus on building the business again. What we haven't realized that I think that how much of an impact the general, and we back then, I think, were under the impression that most of our success was attributed to our hard work, which is needed. It's needed, but it also is largely impacted by market conditions, because the curve that our success has shown since, it's like another slump, and then trying to get out of it. Like you said, 2014 is a total slump so far, and it seems that market conditions impact us heavily, because most of our clients are the big consumer packaged goods, the big CPG brands like Procter & Gamble, like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Colgate-Palmolive, PepsiCo, Kellogg's, and these brands are, you can feel consumer sentiment on their sales. And because TerraCycle as a recycling company isn't still something that's needed by everyone, it's more like what's wanted by the more environmentally conscious companies or departments within companies. It's more a want than a need. So when things get uncertain, it's not even about their revenues going down potentially, because they've done well since. It's more like the uncertainty. If you're uncertain about how next year is going to look like, you're going to cut back on some of your wants, and you're only going to do your needs. And because TerraCycle and sustainability is still something that departments in larger companies want, but the company to function as a whole doesn't need yet, because there isn't regulation that requires them to be more compliant with sustainability efforts, or just be more mindful of them. It's still a want for most companies. And when even though they did well in the past couple of years, but because of all the uncertainty and because of their inability to forecast with high confidence, they are holding out and pushing out these types of investments or expenditures like sustainability. So for TerraCycle, the past couple of years, 2022 was already the year where we were like, okay, so 2021, we hit another record year. 22, it was essentially flat. 23, essentially flat. 24, still looking flat, but hoping for a better year this year. But like you said, it's very difficult to get out of this slump because of the uncertainty. It's not because our partners are not making good money. It's because our partners are not certain that they will keep making good money. So it's
right. Yeah, there is a lot of sustainability push around the world. Like people are saying, if we don't act now, it will be too late to act very soon.
Yep.
Aren't there regulations at government levels for every company to have sustainability investments? If they do, or if it does, that should provide steady. In fact, it should keep growing year upon year, because more and more companies have to adhere to that law. I'm not sure if there are any laws made by governments yet.
Right now, if you look at, let's say, I don't know, a soda company creating beverages in a plastic bottle, today there's no law that says that you have to make sure that it's recyclable. For example, you can make it of any material. It has to be, it has to check all the health and safety measures. Like it has to be safe to consume a drink out of that bottle, but it does not have to be recyclable in any capacity. And it's today there's no law that would mandate anyone to use materials that are going to guarantee recyclability, or use trading routes, or use logistical routes within a country that would simplify recyclability. For example, you have to make sure that you partner with retailers and also facilitate the taking back of all those bottles that people buy. They drink what's in it, and then they can just throw it out, instead of that them to be incentivized to bring it back somewhere, to just drop it off somewhere, either at the retailer where they bought it, or in a different type of collection point. Today, there's no regulation around that in most advanced countries. It's more, and because, so there's no regulation. The other thing is that the majority of people are very, very convenient and comfortable, and something that's uncomfortable doesn't stick along for long as a habit, unless it's forced or enforced.
True.
And because of that, only a minority of people actually seriously do recycling. People do the comfortable thing. For example, in the apartment complex, in this condominium where I live, we do have large trash bins on the garage level for plastic, for paper, and then for the regular waste. So it's easy for me to just walk down with a big bag of plastic that we've collected in the house every 2-3 days and just throw it into the plastic bin instead of throwing it into the everything bin. If it wouldn't be the case, I would have to make the effort to go somewhere on the street to a collection point that might be a couple of corners away that I don't want to walk that much, or it's not on the route that I usually take with the car, or even if it would be on the route, there's no super easy hop out and hop in type of parking where you just drop off your trash and then you leave. And it would be more difficult. So for example, this one, at least in most parts of Europe and US, is already solved for condominiums that you can recycle selectively. Like you can make sure that, okay, this goes into the plastic, that goes into the paper, and then, or for us in Hungary at least, plastic and aluminum cans are collected in the same bin and then they get sorted. But if it wouldn't be this comfortable, a lot less people would actually care about it, because people's priority is just to stay alive, to do it the most comfortable way possible. And because there's less regulation around it that enforces it on the individual, like you're not gonna be fined for throwing a plastic bottle into the regular bin. There's no fine that, and the same goes for corporations. You're not gonna be fined if something's unrecyclable yet. I hope it's gonna happen. And even then, there are companies' primary goal is to make profit and not to make recyclable materials. And that primary goal is always just being made difficult by regulations, by financial regulations, by environmental regulations, by health regulations. So they always would do the minimum effort. And for example, TerraCycle's motto has been that anytime we enter into a contract with one of our brand partners, we want to keep their efforts at a minimum so that they don't have the excuse of not doing it. We want to make it as comfortable for our partners as possible. We'll do the uncomfortable part. We'll do the legwork. Just do business with us and just let's recycle. But on a company level, recycling itself isn't something that would be worth financially. It's always going to be a financial burden. It has to be factored in. And if someone would want to be today, if let's say Coca-Cola says that I'm going to be a lot more eco-conscious than most of my competitors, I'm going to bring back these very thick bottles. They used to have these thick plastic bottles that you wouldn't recycle those, you would refill them and just put a new cap on it, new label on it, and out it goes again. And if they would want to do it today, they would need to use, I don't know, 5 times as much material as they use today, or at least 4 times, because it has to be a lot thicker. So everyone else would have 4 times the cost of their sourcing for virgin plastic compared to Coca-Cola. So that's a competitive disadvantage to them to go and be the one company that is more eco-conscious.
Yeah, I was about to come to that. I think just Pepsi, Coke, Kinley and Aquafina, if these plastic bottles are on, if there is product innovation that could replace these plastic bottles with something eco-friendly, right? And if there is some kind of regulation, that alone could probably help a lot of sustainability efforts.
Absolutely. These and their counterparts in, let's say, in the shampoo business or in the washing gel business, they are the biggest producers of these types of things. And then, of course, there's also a huge issue with how the different regions mature in the world. For example, in Europe, even if you buy these, most European cities, at least, if you live in a European city, there's a very high likelihood that there's a yellow bin. We call them yellow bins for plastic and aluminum recycling. That's very conveniently on your path, either in your house or right in front of it. You can just throw it out. So there's a very high likelihood that those will end up in the right bin in Europe. Right. However, this is because Europe's people are rich enough to buy shower gel or shampoo or washing gel and or Coca-Cola or Pepsi products. And there's an infrastructure around collecting it and sorting it and then eventually recycling it. But there are a lot of countries, for example, in Southeast Asia, where a large part of the population is already rich enough to be able to afford shower gel and these types of products and washing gel and all these things that cost a lot more than if you would create it at home organically. But in those countries, the infrastructure isn't there yet to collect and to process it so that it doesn't pollute rivers that then flow into the sea and then just float around for a couple of decades as it dissolves. So it's a lot of that too. It's one, there's a lot of it being made because it's the cheapest material, and that's healthy. I mean, healthy enough for passing regulations. And there's no incentive for them not to do it this way, other than public opinion sometimes. And then the other thing is that in some part of the world there isn't an infrastructure yet for properly processing it. And the other thing is that Pepsi does sell Coke, for example, in aluminum bottles, or they do sell it in glass bottles, like aluminum cans or glass bottles. They do sell it like that. For example, in Budapest, most restaurants, if you ask for Coca-Cola, you would get it in a glass bottle. It wouldn't be in plastic, or it wouldn't be just put into your glass cup. It would come in a glass bottle. So they do have that, but it's lower volume.
Yeah.
It's much higher storage cost and processing cost, and then collecting cost. So it's you have to have the infrastructure, and because restaurants get things shipped to them from the vendor all the time, they can just use the same crates to put the empty glasses back and send it back to the manufacturer, in this case Coca-Cola. So there's an infrastructure for that, but not on an individual household level.
True. So what's next in your career, Dom? You come to CIO. Some people go from CIO to COO and then towards CEO, but you have a natural inclination towards finance. I don't know if it goes towards CFO. So what's your view? Where do you see yourself going from here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's I don't know if you've heard. There are many interpretations of CIO. Most common known is Chief Information Officer. If you're in the banking business, it's called Chief Investment Officer. But if you're a Chief Information Officer, CIO also sometimes stands for career is over, because it's even though many do make a transition into a different department, like within finance or within operations, but most get to this level and prefer being an IT executive. So most people, I would say, hop around the different senior IT leadership roles in different companies. If they've reached the peak of their current company, then the likeliest is going to be that they're going to do a similar gig at a different company. And for me personally, that's a very good question. Right now, I am planning to stay here for a few more years. Let's see where TerraCycle goes, because TerraCycle is a very, very interesting company in many ways. And this is the reason, like any of my previous positions, my longest position in being the same position was 2.5 years. My longest to be with the same company was 2 years and 10 months. And then, like you said, I've been here for 5.5 years. So TerraCycle is a bit different in the sense that one, I'm senior enough to have a big enough impact. My work can have a noticeable impact on the company. That's a big responsibility, but it's also very different to operate on this level. So that gives a personal joy, being able to work on this level. And two, it's in such an interesting part of its life that now I want to stick around to see where it goes, because one, it's ups and downs, and it's a small enough company that I know why it's up and why it's down when it comes to profitability or revenue. And it's so learning from these is very, very educational, I think, and trying to support, or at least make sure that it's from an IT perspective, we are doing the best we can to make sure that the company is going to be profitable. And that means that the efficiency in terms of development, let's not waste people's times. Let's really focus on the projects that have the highest potential of either generating revenue or help keep cost at bay. And there's a lot of these things. And two, TerraCycle has been operating for 22, 23 years, something like that. So it's depending on when we count, when we start the clock on when it was founded versus when it was actually incorporated. But now it's at the gate where it's contemplating going public. Like that means that they'll be listed on a stock exchange and actually be a publicly traded company through an IPO process. And that would be very interesting to see, like seeing a company. Plus, I have shares, so those would be worth something if the company would go public. So seeing this journey, which is now helped by a new CFO. We had a new CFO who started about 6 months ago, and this is one change that we did, by the way. I'm now reporting to the CFO. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but we had this talk, I think around the time when he arrived, and then 3 or 4 months ago, we made it official, and then it didn't change anything in day to day, but he's a really good partner in thinking about IT investment and company strategy. And it helps me be more in the know of how the company is doing financially and where should I put my effort in terms of IT budgeting or project planning, general forecasting. So these things are good. And then just to get back to your question of where I see myself, I'm comfortable. Like if it's a corporate job, like if it's a company job, I'm planning to stay on the IT track. It's something that is interesting enough, and it's touching most things. I think that the two departments that are in touch with every other department are finance and IT, because most departments have financial planning, or at least they have to have a budget. So they touch on, so finance touches on every department, and IT is the other thing that it touches on every department. So I get to see most of how the company operates through my role, and I really enjoy that. If I would be a COO, that would be limiting from that perspective, potentially. It also depends on how big of a company it is. For example, in our company, it makes less sense to have a COO because it's too small for it. It would be, if it would be 2,000 people, maybe there would be rationale in having a COO for all the, let's say, the back office things, or all the things that are the day-to-day of a company. But here wouldn't be. Yeah, so let's say that the next couple of years, definitely TerraCycle. Let's see how the company forms. And I'm also very curious to see how a company of this size gets out of the slump, because we've been in the slump for 3 years now. This is the third slump year, and it's really interesting. And I think it's educational, because even though a lot of the leaders at TerraCycle, most of the leaders at TerraCycle on a senior level are 10 plus years in their business, some 30 plus years in their respective area of work, like finance or commercial. And still it takes the team to actually figure out how are we going to get out of this. So it's not something where you have a playbook and then you open it up on page 7 and then this is how you get out of this type of slump. So it's not, even the very experienced people don't have a playbook for how to operate this. They have a playbook for how to stay afloat, but they don't have a playbook for how to actually outgrow this uncertain time, or grow out of it, or grow despite of being in such like going through such uncertain times. So it's very interesting to see, and I'm actually happy that I've still stuck around for these many years, because I would have missed it. And for now, it's that I'm comfortable as a CIO, and if it wouldn't be this, because TerraCycle has been such a good employer, I've had such a good time and really supportive peers, and I also have a lot of friends who work at other companies. It would be, for now, I don't know of a company or of a role that I would likely enjoy more than this one here. It's if my realistic alternatives that I would be interested in is going into telecommunications or pharmaceuticals or banking and or some other type of retail, potentially, again, like with Aldi. But IT roles in those companies, I think, aren't as rewarding as this one in many ways. So it would be difficult to find something if I would want to be employed again. So I think that my most realistic next chapter, when the TerraCycle chapter ends, is going to be more being an entrepreneur, having a business with a couple of friends or people that I've grown to know and trust, and not look for another employment type of relationship. It would be very difficult to match TerraCycle. There's a lot of things work very well here in terms of the level of authority that I have, and the level of authority and the level of responsibility here match. So you're not just expected to do a good job, but you're also authorized to do it the best way you can. It's a really good match, and I have a very good visibility of the company, how things are working, and yeah, I have a good team in IT that I like working with, as well as most of my peers I really enjoy working with in different departments. So it's really difficult to match it, not even top it, just to match it at another company. There might be one, I just haven't come across one, and none of my friends have worked at one yet. So So I usually don't think in terms of employment as a next chapter. It's more like it will likely have to be a smaller business with a few friends, or join a smaller company as a part owner or investor instead of employment, because I would still like to work, of course, but yeah, more like that. I could see more of the fulfillment that I'm getting here in that type of setup than in a different role at a bigger or different company.
Or could be a board member in few companies.
Yeah, would
with
love
the
that.
experience you bring
Those
in.
are the best jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. What keeps you ticking in on a personal life, other than, when I say personal life, other than work? What interests you in life? Yeah.
What finances do, as you know, it's I'm a big fan of personal finance. I used to do a lot of budgeting when I was earlier in my life. By now, most things are predictable or unavoidable, and if things are predictable enough or just unavoidable, then it makes a little sense to track it by the dollar or by the euro. It's that, and so it's personal finance is one of these things, and it's in everything. Me investing, like I save part of my salary every month, and it goes into investments in stocks, bonds, real estate. I bought the first one last year, an apartment that's not being let, and so that's one. I'm also a father of two, and it's very interesting to see the kids grow, how they evolve. One is going to be 6 this summer, then the other is going to be 4 in September. So having they are a great source of joy and a great source of frustration at times. So it's also molding me and shaping me, but that's really, really good. And they are in this age, it's like something without an operating system. Like you get to write their code, and they're so programmable by the things you say and by the things they see you do. So this you have to be aware to do things the right way, to be a good person, to teach them about the world, and simple things like too much chocolate is unhealthy, and then they just accept it. Like they don't challenge that statement, they just accept it. They haven't read 20 studies about the fact that it might not be true. So it's like they just accept too much chocolate is unhealthy, or you have to eat food with a lot of fiber, or if you eat meat, then just don't eat too much meat. And it's like the simple things that if it's food, or how we are nice to people, or if you're not nice to people, then people don't want to spend time with you. So that's why it's good to be nice to people. All these things, just teaching them and programming them, and then living them, and then when you do something in your life that you would have done anyway, but they are there, they are witnessing, and those are all those teachable moments. Like, see that he did that because of XYZ. And then, of course, they have their unending list of questions about why life is the way it is. Or, for example, my daughter is now almost being 6, has these questions about the universe, like how things work. Like, why is Earth spinning, or like why is it rotating around the sun? Like, or if on parts of the Earth that are upside down, why is the water not falling off? And all these things, she's very interested in this. So the fact that you get to teach these things and be able to teach them, it's actually a great source of joy that I can actually explain it to her how that works. Or the more complex things, where I tell her for 5 minutes, and then I tell her that we'll talk about this in 3 years again. Like, she's okay, why can we see, for example, why is it that we see the car on the street? And then I start explaining ray tracing, that starts with a particle coming from the sun and then bouncing, and then hitting the car, bouncing off the car and landing in your eye, which is a bit complex for a 5 or 6-year-old, but at least she gets that the car has a certain color because that's the only piece that it reflects. The others it absorbs. And so yeah, these things are interesting to teach, and so that part is also a big part of my life. And there's always something happening. Right now we're considering moving and trying to get a mortgage, which is financial, so it's somewhat exciting. And all these things that are me, and then me also thinking, like, what else could I be doing? Not too much though, so that there's still family time. But what else could I be doing other than TerraCycle? And it's primarily investing for now because it's low effort enough, but it also yields merit. So there's you can see it grow, you can see progress in it, you can see the ups and downs of the market. If you don't want to buy individual stocks, you just buy the market. It's like an S&P 5 index fund, 500 index fund. So it's so those things, and just staying in touch with friends. That's became very treasured. Like before I had kids, it's like 1 or 2 evenings a week. I would meet with a friend. We would talk for a few hours, and then we go home. So at least once a week, I would have some type of engagement. Now, if it's once a month, I'm very happy, and it's usually a coffee at lunchtime, then time after work, which is spent with the kids. So it's kids, investing, personal finance, looking at smaller companies that I could invest in. That would be nice, and where I could add value as well as understand it enough so that I'm comfortable with what they're doing. That's also something that I'm interested in. But yeah, these things. If that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And any plans to explore the world, Dom? Have you seen outside Europe or?
Yeah, we've been to. I mean, I've been to the US many times, but it's the closest you get to Europe. We've been to Bali. We've been to Dubai several times. One of my best friends is living in Dubai, so we've been there several times. We've been to Turkey. I've been to Turkey, and I do want to continue that. My wife's more conservative. She prefers European culture. She likes the architecture. She likes the food, and I'm the one that would love to go further and to more different. One of my best friends have just been to the Philippines for a few weeks. They liked it a lot. So now I want to do Philippines. I definitely want to do India at one point, and with family or with just my wife would be really nice to experience. I would have you give me tips on what to see.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's mostly like a couple of other than a couple of visits in Dubai, which I actually want to do more because it's a very interesting place. It's very, very dual to me. One, it's a huge waste of resources to build a huge city in the desert because it takes a lot of money to actually maintain it. But on the other hand, if you want to build such a big city, at least you're not cutting down forests to make room for a big city. So you're making it somewhere where there's nothing growing anyhow. So at least it's not disturbing too much wildlife, other than the coral reefs that I've heard of. But at least on land, it's not disturbing too much. So, and it's very interesting because of all the things that would be questionable in Dubai. What's not questionable in Dubai is that most people there are there to better their lives on any level. If it's the real estate developer who wants to build another high rise, or if it's the courier who's delivering food, they are all there because they want to do better, and they are all saving and investing to make a better life for themselves, or a lot of cases for their children. Like I've talked to taxi drivers, for example, that have been there for 7 years, and they do have 2-3 kids at home, either in Bangladesh or in Pakistan. And it's a lot. It's 7 days a week work, 10-12 hours a day, but they do it so that their kids can go to private school and they can learn English, and they can have a lot better life than he and his wife had growing up. So it's inspiring to see that everyone that's there is there to work and to better their lives and to improve their circumstances. Because in Dubai or like in the Emirates, you can't stay there if you don't have work. If your work visa expires, you have to leave within one or so months, or you can stay there with a tourist visa. But so that just hustle culture of everyone being there to make something of themselves, that's something that I really like. It's good to be inspired just by all the business of it, and then it's good to be away from it because I also like the quiet. Right now we live in a very walkable area of Budapest. That's very green, not in the city center, and it's nice and slow, and people have time to just stop and talk for 10 minutes. Neighbors, if they meet each other at their doorstep. So this part is really good about living here. But yeah, there's different things in different parts of the world that I really like.
So tying that to our next question, going back to the technology and career, there's so much technology innovation happening in the world. OpenAI has disrupted the way we think what is capable with the technology. ChatGPT, it has become a household name as much as Google became household name in the past.
Yeah.
And you said these cab drivers in Dubai and different parts of the world, which are very labor intensive work, right? When most of these things are disrupted by technology, both knowledge based work and physical intensive work, how do you see where we are headed, and what will we be doing, and what will our kids be doing? Uh, what's your perspectives on that? Future of work, future of world, next generation, Tom? Yeah.
I think it's going to continue on this path that started about, I don't know, over 100 years ago, 150 years ago with industrialization. Back then, I think even 100 years ago or so, more than 90% of the population was working in agriculture. By now, at least in the US, I think it's 2% or 4% working in agriculture. So that's a very good example of something that's absolutely necessary, but can be improved by technology to the extent that it takes a fraction of the people, 1/20th of the people, or like 1/30th of the people to work in it. And I think it's going to be similar to many things, like creating fabric is something like this. It used to be very labor intensive. Now it's less labor intensive. And there are things where it just isn't worth spending the time. For example, there are simple things, sewing a t-shirt together.
Right.
It might never be as quick and as productive as a person can do it if it's done by a machine, or it's going to be a different type of t-shirt. So there's this continuous evolution of the necessary things that need to get done. But just on the cab driver example, in Dubai now they're planning with flying taxis. That means that's faster rides from Abu Dhabi to Dubai. So one taxi can can carry 4 people in the same time as one taxi could. Right. It's likely going to cost 4 times the money too, but it only takes one, pilot, cab driver who would be employed instead of 4 cab drivers.
And if it could become autonomous.
That's the next step then.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's the cut in work, and then cut in things that people don't enjoy, most of them anyhow. Like farming, there's only a very little piece of subset of people who enjoy large scale farming, like being on a tractor for 12 hours. Only few people enjoy. Most people do it because it's for the money, and then most people don't do it because they don't have to do it, because they buy it in a grocery store. So most of the things that go away first, I think, again, tying back to people's two ambitions of surviving and being more comfortable, are the things that people generally wouldn't choose to do if they would have better options. And agriculture is like this. Cab driving could be it. I think most cab drivers, if they would be able to do something else that is more fulfilling, only a small fraction of them would say that cab driving is, I've tried 15 things and cab driving is the thing that I genuinely enjoy. So most of them are not doing it because they genuinely enjoy it. It's because it pays the bills and it's reliable and they know it.
Right.
So I think that those jobs are always the ones that could go away first. And if I'm talking about office jobs, finance, accounting, forecasting, a lot of these things could be enhanced by generative AI or machine learning, like large language models applied to financial data. Those could aid that. And most people, like I said earlier with my financial management program example from GE, most things that they did was number crunching in Excel. It was very soul crushing, zero creativity, but had to get done. And it was a lot of effort and it was difficult to automate. 10 years have passed since, and now it would be easier to automate. So a lot of those will likely get automated. And I don't think that the people who did Excel number crunching will miss doing that in Excel. They will be happily doing something higher value add. So I think that it's, whenever I think about these technological leaps or jumps, I don't think about them in terms of thousands of jobs are going to go away. It's like thousands of people will have the opportunity to do something that they enjoy more or dislike less. And with AI, I think AI is going to be like the internet was. It means that it's not going to be, you're not going to be selling internet unless you're a provider. You're just going to be using internet like everyone else. And you're going to use it in a million ways. And you're not going to be like in the 90s, let's say in 91, 92, or like 95, let's say 95 US. The internet has been around. You actually have websites in 95 in the US, but it's not totally the default. Like you wouldn't pick the internet to look up your local lawnmower shop. Nowadays, they likely have an Instagram account documenting their life as a lawnmower. But back then, it wouldn't be the first thing. It would be Yellow Pages in the US. And today's the internet. And back then, you would go to a company and say that, hey, you guys should really utilize the internet. It could double your productivity or triple your revenue or triple your revenue compared to the money spent on ads, because the internet is coming and it's going to revolutionize everything. Back then, 25, 30 years ago, you could sell the internet as a person who can create websites, and then it became so default that you don't even speak about it. You just expect it to work. And then if you don't have an unlimited data plan on your phone, then you're expected to the coffee shop to provide it for you, or your home provider, or the apartment that you move into. You just expect that there's going to be reliable, fast internet. It's a commodity that most people don't even think about. And I think AI is going to be like that, but not. And then for the internet, I think it took from 95 till about 2010 to be so mature that it's just a default. And if you didn't have a website, it sucked. I think AI is going to be like that, but not in 15 years, but like in 5 years. And it's going to be such an integral part of every application that we use that we're not going to be selling AI or thinking about how to utilize AI. It's just going to be in everything. It's going to be like Google is changing their search engine, or like how they show you results with their generative AI solution. I'm sure that Zoom that we're using right now is going to use some type of additional intelligence that's going to make the experience even more comfortable, either setting it up or going through it, or just the capturing and then distilling. And then if you would ask them to give me the 5 highlights of this conversation, it would likely do it for you, and then create a video of it for you. And it might be within Zoom. You wouldn't have to have 4 different programs to actually, or like applications to do that. Today, you would still have that, they exist, but you wouldn't have that. You just push the button on like highlights on Zoom, 5-minute video, 3-minute video, and then Zoom will do that for you, and it's readily available to be uploaded wherever you want to distribute it. So I think it's going to be more like that the AI is going to be such a default part. Or like if you want to schedule a meeting, I'm looking at my Google Calendar, it's going to be there. There might be a button there that says, hey, I want to talk to this person and these people. Find me the best time where no one's going to be tired, because it's okay in their time zone. Everyone has the time, and or is in a time slot that works for most. And the one person, or like the couple of people that wouldn't work for, have a one-on-one there. So that's the easiest to move. So find me those time slots and give me the first 2 that might work best. And I will, and please send out the email telling people that, hey, we should meet these other 2 time slots, and please pick the one that you prefer, noting that I prefer number 1. So that's something that's very manual. I would take 15 to 20 minutes to go through it, and someone could do it for me without taking my job away. It's going to make me more efficient than instead of just canceling my job, for example. So I think it's going to be more of those things. It's instead of the 4 or 5 tools that are most known today, like ChatGPT-4, I think it's going to be part of everything. Like creating a project plan, look at my project and tell me where you see, show me the critical path, for example. Instead of you doing the groundwork, it's going to show you the critical path, and then list the biggest risk that you see that could impact the critical path. And then so I would see it like that. More AI becoming like that. It's instead of being the thing that everyone thinks of, it's going to be the thing that everyone's just using almost intuitively to make their lives easier.
No, very interesting perspective. Yeah, no, it does, and very interesting perspective, Dom. Yeah. The only thing is, while all the previous revolutions, while disrupted existing jobs and created new jobs, this one alone feels different. For example, if there are 100 people taking care of a farm, because they need to, we need that many people. One drone or few drones can do, and we just need one person to monitor those drones now, not 100. If there were 10 coders to code certain capability, probably we just need 2 because AI can generate a lot of ready-made code. Will we have something new coming up to create occupation for these is a fundamental question, because all the previous revolutions, something new came up. We just don't know what will that new thing be, because even creativity, creative arts, music is also being done by AI now. So that's something that's bothering many people. So I don't know if we'll have an answer. We just have to wait for. Yeah.
A couple of things. One, yes, I agree that we have to wait, and I have zero idea what my kids are going to be working as a profession.
Right.
And but 2, I see it. For example, the music example, I see it, or even electric cars or horses. Like back in Henry Ford's time, I think he famously said if you would ask people what they want, they would say faster horses instead of just cars. And cars did came and horses did go, and instead of everyone riding, horse riding became a novelty. Like some people, I mean, some people did it. It was more like a very niche thing. And there are still horse races, and there are still people who enjoy riding horses in their free time, but they are not dependent on horses to help get their work done. And the same goes for, I think, the way farming is done, or electric cars. Like a lot of people say that well, electric or alternatively fueled cars that don't have so many carbon dioxide type of or carbon monoxide type of emissions, they are coming, but I like the sound of the vroom sound that my car makes, and I enjoy shifting gears and all those things. People might have liked being fully in control of their horse, or as much as they could, but electric cars are coming, and people will still have internal combustion engine cars, ICE cars, and they will still be doing racing with them because they enjoy, and they will still keep them and maintain them as a hobby instead of being the default when it comes to commuting in their day-to-day. So it's a shift that's happening, and one, it might be more comfortable. Electric cars, especially for people who live in smaller condominiums like ours, where you can just have a car charger installed in your parking spot in the garage, in the underground garage, or when people live in houses in those areas, it's going to be very convenient to just have it charged at home instead of going to a gas station, even if it takes longer. And after a while, it might not take that much longer, or just not being inconvenient at all. But it's a shift, and it's logical from many perspectives. And 20 years from now, likely Porsche 911, which is one of the coolest sports cars, because you can use it every day as well, but it's still a really great car to drive. It's still going to be around. They're still going to be making Porsche 911s because there's going to be a demand for it, much like there's demand for racehorses, even though it's not the default means of transportation. And I think that it's going to be like this from a lot of perspective, that a lot of jobs are going to go away, but people are not going to be missing them. They're just going to do something that they either enjoy more, or it's less of a hassle. And then if all these jobs, all the easy to automate jobs will be automated or just aided by AI to the extent that it takes 2 people instead of 10 to do that same thing, those 8 coders that they don't need to code now either decide to be better coders, so that of those 2 jobs that they have, they will take, or decide to do something else, because if they don't want to be the best, then they're likely doing coding to make a living, and they might be doing something else that they want to do for making a living, and then it's ever evolving towards services. It might be a lot of things that we don't spend money on today, or don't spend time on today because we're busy making money, or it's just not worth the value. But if it's let's say if a lot of people are going to be, silly example, but if there's going to be 3 times the amount of personal trainers, it might cost a third of the money to have a personal trainer. A lot of people will still have time, and a lot more people might have time for personal trainers because they need less time to make the same money, or it's just less people doing that. So there might be a lot of services that take the place of this that we don't foresee today. I can only work with the ones that I know today. I don't have too much creativity in this sense, but there's likely going to be this shift towards service-based industries, like it's the great shift in most countries. Like first you do agriculture, and then as agriculture gets a little bit more automated and you have workforce freed up, you do industry, you start doing manufacturing. As manufacturing gets more automated, you start doing more service-based things, and there's more office jobs. And then as those get more automated, there's more things that are around personal well-being and not just around staying alive. It's there's a lot more demand today for anything that's around personal well-being than there was 20 years ago. A lot more people use psychiatrists if they don't feel well. A lot of people use like personal trainers, or just take the time to be mindful about their health and what they need, what they want to do. Other people have more flexibility to pursue hobbies. Like 50 years ago, when even 30, maybe not 30 years ago, but 40 years ago in Hungary, a 6-day work week was the norm. You worked for 6 days and you had Sunday off. And you had school 6 weeks, and that went away. And now we have 5 days. Still, productivity is increasing because of all the automation. People that want to be employed are still employed, most of the overwhelming majority of them. And it's no one's doing worse just because you don't do 6 days a week and in school or at work. And people do more hobbies. It's like less of your life is about staying alive, and more about your life is about enjoying it. And I think that this ratio is going to keep improving, and there's going to be more flexibility. You can make the same money. There might be even a 4-day work week where they, instead of having 8 programmers not needed, they're just going to keep 4 of them that work half the time, and then still make a good living and have a lot more time to pursue other interests, other business ventures, or just hobbies, or just spending time with the family, or your personal garden, because you don't have to do farming, but you still enjoy growing something of your own in your vegetable bed.
True.
So I think it's going to be more that there's going to be more time freed up to do other things, and that sparks creativity. If you have that, if you don't have to worry about your next paycheck, but still you have the bandwidth while making money to do something else, because you only work 4 days a week. That those other days could be spent with family, or could be spent with building something else, without having to put 14 hours in a day to build it side by side with your full-time job. So I think it's going to be more like that. And if a lot more people have a lot more time to be creative, statistically speaking, a lot more people are going to be creative, and a lot more new things are going to be created.
Makes sense. No, perfect. Yeah, makes perfect. Is there any incident or any person or a book that inspired you, changed your life?
Yes, it was financial, to your surprise. You know, there was a book. It's called Millionaire Minds, and it was strictly about money habits. It wasn't about personal fulfillment or about the quality of your relationships with other people. It was only about finances. And the first part of the book was about why you are the way you are. It taught me about a lot of the things that you do that you think are genuine thoughts of your own, are programs that were programmed by the people around you, by parents, teachers, the environment that you grew up in, the environment that you had to adapt to. And it's not your own, it's been programmed. And as such, you can decide to override that program. In some of those, in the case of some of those habits, it's easier. In the case of other habits, it's so ingrained that it's super difficult to continuously go against it if it's not serving your best interest. And the second half of that book was about 17 examples of how people that financially do well do things differently from people who do financially average and or are financially poor. And then, for example, back then, of the 17 ways of that, I was 14 of the 17, I was doing the things the poor people way instead of the rich person's way. So I was like, okay, well, this book was written by a millionaire, and because of that, I'm just going to do things the way he writes should a rich person think. And then that had a lot of positive effect on a lot of other aspects of my life, not just financial. It made me a lot more aware of why I'm thinking the things that I'm thinking, why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. What are the things that I don't do? I just procrastinate on. What are the things that serve my needs? Just became mindful about getting better in general, being a better person, like being a better partner, being a better friend, being more attentive. I also started to pay a lot more attention to people's habits, like why they do the things they do. I got a lot more interested in why people are the way they are, and what drives them, what blocks them, what's blocking them if they seem stuck, or what's the reason for the lack of motivation. I've also learned not to want to change everyone, because after I read the book, for the first few years, I wanted to change everyone. I wanted to improve everyone's life, and just told them, I pointed out all the things that they are thinking wrong or doing wrong, and how this is going to lead to little result. And instead, you should do things this way and that way and another way. That didn't work. So it took me 5 years to learn that I shouldn't want to enforce change on people that don't yet want to change. And but yeah, it's that helped. That was the first spark that actually also showed me that I don't dislike reading. Up until that point, I really thought that I didn't like reading, but turns out I just never read something that actually was interesting to me. And after that, I read a few more books, not on technology. It's more like on psychology of people, psychology of money, and these types of things.
There is a saying on that note that you try to positively influence people to change their habits. There is a saying that if we collect all the wealth in the world and distribute equally, in a few days it will come back to where exactly it is now.
Yeah, by now I see truth in that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts? I mean, this was a great discussion, Dom. Thank you so much. Any closing thoughts before we wind up?
Closing thoughts. Yeah, a lot of things are. It's yeah, you could say this in any point in time, but we are going through very interesting times. So I'm just standing by, seeing how things are evolving, because it's very, very interesting to watch in many ways, in many areas of life. But yeah, AI being one of the loudest things, I'm very curious to see how they're gonna make it more comfortable, because right now, it's, even though you can use Ryan Gosling's face to make an 8-minute video of how ChatGPT works and completely generated by AI, both the text, the audio, and the video to it. It's not easy. It takes 4 different programs, and knowing how those settings work to make it happen. And I'm very interested to see in how that's gonna be more comfortable and becomes something of a utility, where you just turn on the tap and water comes, type of thing. Or like with Zoom, having the button to create the summary in 3 minutes. I'm very curious to see that evolution of technology, of how it's gonna be an everyday person's thing. For example, cars. Again, 56 years ago, you were expected to change a valve if it tore in your car, or you were expected to to be able to change pieces of your engine to actually be thought of as a responsible car owner, because there are also all sorts of things that could break and were in need of change or repair. Today, most people are completely illiterate when it comes to mechanics of how a car works. They just get in, turn the key or push the button, the car is running, and then you drive, and you don't even have to change gears by now.
Yeah.
So it's I think I'm looking to see how that's going to happen for AI.
Understood. Very interesting. Thank you so much, Dom. Thank you so much for your time. This was really great discussion.
Thank you too, and speak to you soon.
Yeah.